The day my parents handed my sister a check for $400,000 for her wedding, I felt my stomach drop. Not because I was surprised, they had always spoiled her, but because I knew what came next. "Don't worry, we'll help you too," my mother said, patting my hand as if that would soothe the growing knot of anxiety in my chest. "We want both weddings to be special." I smiled, forcing myself to believe her. "My name is Sarah, and I've always been the responsible child, the one who balanced budgets, planned trips, and quietly handled the family's crises while my sister, Emily, basked in the spotlight." Emily is the golden child. Charming, persuasive, endlessly adored. She had the gift of making anyone feel like her biggest fan, including our parents, who seemed to forget that life had rules for a reason. At first, the offer sounded fair. My fiancé, Omar, and I had saved for years, but $400,000 would cover everything we dreamed of and more. I pictured a wedding of elegance and joy, a celebration that would make both families proud. Then came the catch. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was warm, soothing, but the words that followed cut like a blade. "We thought long and hard about your wedding," she said. "And we've decided to help, but we won't be giving you cash like Emily. Instead, we're sending you a loan." I blinked. A loan. My parents weren't just offering support, they were demanding repayment. The sum wasn't trivial. It would take years of financial juggling to pay it back. And unlike Emily, I would be forever indebted, tied to their generosity. I tried to ask why. "It's just a family decision," my father said, avoiding my gaze. "We know you can handle it." Handle it? I felt my throat tighten. The generosity extended to Emily felt like entitlement, while my own received a fine print warning wrapped in politeness. Something didn't add up. Over the next few days, subtle red flags appeared. Emily called constantly, casually asking what I'd done to deserve a loan, laughing as if I should be grateful. My parents mentioned my responsibility more than once, hinting that I needed to manage my finances better, even though I'd saved diligently for years. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a difference in how they treated us, it was deliberate. Something about their excitement for Emily's wedding, their cold practicality for mine, made the air around the topic thick and suffocating. And in the quiet moments, when I thought no one was listening, I started to wonder, was this really a gift? Or had they found a way to humiliate me without anyone noticing? The unease settled in my chest, heavier than any debt. Something was brewing. And I had a feeling it wasn't over. At first, I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was overreacting. But then the little signs started piling up, each one heavier than the last. It began with the conversations I overheard. My parents would whisper behind closed doors, glancing at me nervously when I entered the room. Words like gift, Emily deserves this, and Sarah needs to learn responsibility floated through the air. I wasn't imagining it. They were framing me, subtly, carefully, as the less deserving child. Then came the phone calls. Emily would step into her room, giggling, sometimes bursting out with lines like, "Mom says you're lucky she's not giving you this too." I caught snippets. She was clearly being coached, praised for her charm, reminded that I was the one who had to work for it. My parents didn't correct her. They didn't stop her. They encouraged it. Financially, the gap was impossible to ignore. My parents asked for detailed budgets, scrutinizing every expense, while Emily received lavish gift cards, honeymoon packages, and even offers from family friends to cover parts of her wedding. I had worked for every dollar I saved. Every plan I made was subject to approval. Every question about a loan term was met with a sigh, a raised eyebrow, or a lecture on responsibility. Meanwhile, Emily's extravagance was celebrated as deserved, natural, even inevitable. Even my fiancé noticed. Omar would shake his head quietly when my parents insisted on reviewing every line of our proposed wedding costs, muttering, "They're treating you like a project, not their daughter." I tried to brush it off. Maybe it's just concern, I told myself. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. But the unease wouldn't leave. At family dinners, my parents' eyes lingered on Emily with approval, pride, and indulgence, while I felt their glances flicker with calculation. I began to notice how their favorite phrases subtly reinforced her superiority. "She's so charming. She knows how to handle people. We want her to be happy above all else." Every night, I lay awake, stomach twisted, heart pounding. The more I watched, the more I saw the pattern. Emily's every request, every whim, was treated as urgent and vital. My requests, even the modest ones, were questioned, delayed, or framed as burdens. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just favoritism, it was intentional. And with each whispered phone call, each pointed compliment, each casual dismissal of my concerns, the feeling in my chest grew heavier. My parents weren't simply treating us differently. They were sending a message. A message that I was second, that Emily's happiness was more important than my dignity, that even their generosity could be twisted into control. I couldn't stop thinking, if this was just the wedding, what else had they planned for me? The unease became a knot I couldn't untie. Something was coming, and I had a feeling it would change everything. The truth hit me like a freight train, and I wasn't ready for it. It was a quiet evening, and I was organizing wedding plans, when my father walked into my office with a folder. His smile was practiced, polite, but there was an edge I hadn't noticed before. "Sir," he said, "we need to finalize some details about the wedding fund." I assumed it was about the loan repayment schedule. I was wrong. Inside the folder were documents I shouldn't have seen, a will, bank statements, and notes from financial advisors. And in bold, unmistakable terms, it was laid out. The $400,000 given to Emily was labeled a gift from the estate, with no expectation of repayment, while my portion, supposedly equal in principle, was intentionally structured as a loan, with interest, repayment obligations, and conditions. And it didn't stop there. Hidden clauses detailed that if I defaulted or struggled to pay, Emily would inherit additional family assets before I could, and my parents would legally have the right to withhold other inheritances. I stared at the papers, disbelief freezing me in place. You planned this?" I asked, voice trembling. My mother's calm demeanor was terrifying. "We're just being practical," she said. "We want Emily to have a head start. You're capable, this is just responsible planning." Responsible planning. For them, yes. For me, it was a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. All my years of saving, all my careful budgeting, my sense of responsibility, it meant nothing in their eyes. I had been treated as a second-class child in my own family. Emily, oblivious at first, walked in. She smiled, sweet and unaware, or maybe too aware. "I guess this is all so exciting," she said. "Mom and Dad are really making sure everything is perfect for us." I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the documents from the table and shout that their fairness was a lie. But instead, I felt a cold, simmering rage settle over me. My parents had used money, something they knew I would need for the happiest day of my life, as a weapon, manipulating me into gratitude while they stacked the deck for Emily. Heartbreak mixed with anger. How could they look at me, their child, and treat me as if I were expendable? How could they favor my sister so blatantly, planning her financial advantage while framing it as generosity? I sank into a chair, the weight of betrayal pressing down. And yet, beneath the hurt, a dangerous thought began to form. If they could manipulate me like this, if they thought I would just accept their rules, then they had underestimated one thing, me. They had planned to control, humiliate, and profit from my compliance. But I wasn't going to play along. And as I stared at the papers again, rage and clarity mingling, I realized it was time to fight back. Not with anger alone, but with strategy. And when I did, they would wish they had never thought of treating me as second best. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, the betrayal replaying in my mind like a broken record. Every word my parents had spoken, every promise twisted into a trap, made my chest tighten with a mix of heartbreak and anger. My sister, blissfully unaware, or cunningly oblivious, was the golden child, favored not just emotionally, but financially, while I was handed debt disguised as generosity. At first, I felt small. Defeated. The thought of asking for fairness seemed pointless. I was alone against a system designed to hold me down. But as I sifted through the papers again, a realization struck me like lightning. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. My parents had weaponized their wealth, their influence, and their favoritism to manipulate me. They thought they could dictate my happiness, my future, even my dignity. And I realized something crucial: they were wrong. Every sacrifice I had made, every careful plan I had laid, every bit of responsibility I had carried, those weren't flaws, they were my armor. They had assumed that guilt and obedience would bend me into submission. But the betrayal had ignited something far stronger than fear: determination. I remembered all the nights I had stayed up balancing accounts, planning budgets, and dreaming of a wedding that reflected my values, not their whims. I remembered the sting of watching Emily praised for charm alone, while I was overlooked. And I realized I wasn't powerless. I had knowledge, preparation, and patience on my side. I didn't need to confront them blindly. I could strike carefully, deliberately, where it would hurt the most: their pride and their lies. The trigger moment came when I thought about the wedding itself. They had tried to turn what should have been a celebration of love into a tool for humiliation. They had attempted to frame generosity as superiority, favor as entitlement. And that, more than anything, lit a fire in me. I would not allow my life, my happiness, or my dignity to be dictated by manipulation. By morning, the hurt had transformed into resolve. I would fight, not with rash emotion, but with strategy. I would expose the truth behind the loans, the favoritism, the secret plans. I would ensure that the world could see what they had tried to hide. And most importantly, I would reclaim what was mine, not just financially, but emotionally. For the first time in months, I felt light. Focused. Powerful. I wasn't a victim. I was a strategist. And the reckoning was coming. I didn't confront them. That was the first and most important decision I made. On the surface, I played the grateful daughter. I thanked my parents for their support. I told Emily how excited I was for her wedding. I even joked about how responsible I was for accepting a loan instead of a gift. Every smile I gave them made them relax. Every nod convinced them I was under control. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Step 1 was paper trails. I made copies of the will drafts, the financial advisor notes, the loan agreements, every document that showed how carefully they'd structured generosity for Emily and debt for me. I highlighted the language: non-repayable gift, estate advance, conditional loan, interest applied. On paper, the favoritism wasn't emotional anymore. It was measurable. Step 2 was witnesses. I started asking questions, innocently. At family dinners, I'd say things like, "It's so generous that Emily got her wedding paid for outright," and watch my parents correct me without thinking. "Well, she needed stability," my mother would say. "You're stronger," my father would add. I wrote it all down. Dates. Exact wording. Tone. Emily helped without realizing it. She bragged constantly, to cousins, to friends, even to my fiancé, about how lucky she was that she didn't have to worry about paying anything back. Once, she laughed and said, "Mom said you'd understand." You always do. That one sentence told me everything. Step 3 was timing. My parents were at their most confident now. Emily's wedding was approaching, and they were riding the high of admiration and praise. They believed the story they'd sold: generous parents, grateful daughters, happy family. They had no reason to suspect me. That's when I set the trap. I told my parents Omar and I were reconsidering the wedding budget, and asked if we could review the loan terms one more time for peace of mind. They agreed immediately, relieved, even. During that meeting, my father repeated the justification out loud: Emily's money was a gift because marriage is stressful enough without debt. Mine was a loan because pressure builds character. I recorded it. Not secretly, legally, openly, with consent disguised as documentation for our financial planner. They didn't question it. Why would they? They thought they were teaching me a lesson, not confessing favoritism. By the end of the week, I had everything. Proof of unequal treatment. Proof of intent. Proof that this wasn't concern, it was control. And still, they smiled. Still, they planned seating charts and speeches. Still, Emily walked around glowing, secure in the belief that she had won. They thought I was preparing for a wedding. In reality, I was preparing for exposure. Because the most dangerous moment for people like them is when they believe the story is finished, and they don't realize the final chapter hasn't been read yet. The day I chose to strike was unremarkable to everyone else. Emily was buzzing with excitement over her wedding, my parents were preoccupied with last-minute arrangements, and I appeared, as always, calm, polite, and grateful. But beneath the surface, I held the ultimate weapon: proof. Every document, every recorded conversation, every boastful admission from Emily, all lined up like chess pieces, ready to topple the carefully constructed illusion my parents had built. I invited my parents and Emily to a final wedding meeting, ostensibly to review the budget one last time. They sat across from me, smug and confident, convinced they were still in control. I thought it would be helpful, I said innocently, to have a record of everything so there's no confusion. And I placed a folder on the table. Thick, heavy, and sealed. My mother raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "Just some notes and confirmations," I said. "About wedding funding. You'll see everything clearly." I opened the first page. A copy of Emily's gift check, labeled non-repayable, followed by my loan agreement, highlighted and annotated, interest, repayment schedule, conditional clauses. Then came emails from the financial advisor, clearly stating the intention behind the gift versus the loan. My father's confident smile faltered. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Let's start with Mom," I said. I played the recordings from their own voices. Emily deserves this. Sarah can handle responsibility. Education, or in this case, the wedding, is different for Sarah. Pressure builds character. Emily gasped. My parents froze. Then I played Emily's own words, caught during casual boasting to cousins. "Mom said Sarah would understand. She always does." The room went silent. I leaned forward. "Do you see now? The gift wasn't generosity. It was favoritism disguised as virtue. My wedding was structured as debt, while Emily got her life handed to her. You turned money into a weapon." My mother tried to interject. My father opened his mouth. I held up a hand. No explanations. No excuses. The evidence speaks for itself. By the end of the hour, the truth was undeniable. Relatives called. Friends whispered. Even distant family members had received copies of the documentation I'd discreetly shared. The world saw what had been hidden for years. The golden girl had been shielded, and I had been manipulated. Emily, once untouchable, looked small and embarrassed. My parents sat, stunned, their authority shattered. I had not just exposed favoritism. I had dismantled the illusion of fairness in one calculated move. I closed the folder. I won't be taking a loan, I said. I'll be funding my wedding myself. And I suggest you reconsider how you treat those who actually earn your respect. I stood, shoulders straight, eyes burning with quiet satisfaction. For the first time, the power in the room had shifted entirely. The golden gift had lost its shine. And I had reclaimed my dignity, my wedding, and my voice. The aftermath was almost surreal. Within days, whispers of the revelation spread through the family. Relatives, who had once nodded politely at my supposed grateful compliance, now looked at my parents with quiet astonishment. The image of the perfect, impartial parents had shattered, exposed for favoritism, manipulation, and blatant injustice. Emily, once untouchable, now moved cautiously. Her confidence had crumbled, replaced with an uneasy humility. The golden girl was no longer untouchable. She had learned the hard way that charm and favoritism only shield you for so long. My parents were quiet, defensive, their usual authority stripped away. Every time they looked at me, I could see the mix of guilt, regret, and disbelief. They had treated me as second class, manipulated me into a loan, and now they were forced to face their own hypocrisy, publicly, unmistakably, and irrevocably. As for me, I finally felt free. Free from the manipulation, free from the weight of being the responsible one, who was expected to silently endure favoritism. My wedding planning continued, but now it was on my terms, my money, my choices, my happiness. Every decision felt like reclaiming a piece of my life that had been deliberately undermined. The emotional strain that had kept me awake for months dissolved into a steady sense of satisfaction. I hadn't just fought back. I had dismantled the system that tried to keep me small. I had turned their weapon of control into my tool for liberation. And I had done it with patience, precision, and clarity. To anyone watching this story, have you ever been sidelined, manipulated, or treated unfairly by someone you trusted? Have you been forced to watch others benefit while you were left to struggle? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you turned your own moments of betrayal into strength. And if you want more stories about injustice, cunning, and triumph, make sure to subscribe. Because here's the truth I learned. Those who try to control and humiliate you often forget one thing: the person they underestimate can rise smarter, stronger, and unstoppable. And when that happens, justice isn't just served, it's served in full view, leaving no shadow of doubt. In my case, the golden gift lost its shine, the favoritism was exposed, and the lesson was clear: manipulation only works until the person being manipulated decides to reclaim their power. And when that happens, even the most perfect family can crumble.